bill that you get in either monthly or every 3 months, it also includes the rates that we charge for like developers when they come in for a permit and those kinds of things. That information is also in there. At the beginning of it, in the first few pages, it talks a little bit about our budget and the size of our budget and where our money comes from and what we spend it on generally. What you probably need to know more than anything else about where the money goes, what we spend your money on, is our budget, and I'm not speaking for the Water Bureau, I'm just speaking for BES right now. Our budget is about 2/3 capital and only about 1/3 operating. So we're spending 2/3 of our money either on paying debt service on stuff we've already built, or spending money on stuff we're building this year, or putting a little bit of money away for stuff we're going to build in future years. So, and when I say build, it's almost entirely about replacing the infrastructure that we already have. The pipes we have, about 2,500 miles of pipes in the city, their average age is about 80 years. And so we have what's called a mature system. You can take that any way you like, but a lot of our pipes are pretty old, and particularly in the core of the city, the older part of the city, that pipe is getting up there. We have quite a bit of pipe, over 100 years old. And so we're replacing pipe constantly. Of our capital budget, which is about $120 million a year, about half of that money on an average year is spent purely on pipe replacement. Now, for the next few years, we're going to be spending quite a bit of money at our treatment plants. So all that wastewater goes somewhere and gets treated before it's returned to the river. And it either happens at Columbia Boulevard, which is the largest wastewater treatment plant in Oregon, or it happens at Tryon Creek, which is on the Willamette down near the border between Portland and Lake Oswego. Those two treatment plants treat anywhere from about 80 million gallons of waste in a day in the summer to somewhere on a rainy winter day about 400 million gallons in a day. So there's a huge range depending on how wet the weather is, because, as you probably know, a big part of our system is a combined system where it collects not only sewage from homes and businesses, but it collects the rainwater from the streets and everywhere else too, and it all goes to the wastewater treatment plant. It used to be, you may remember, before 2011, it used to be that when it rained hard, we overflowed into the Willamette River. And they called them CSOs, combined sewer overflows, into them. We had about 60 of them a year before the big pipe project. Now we're down to about 4 a year, and the duration of each one is much shorter than it used to be. And it's really because of those huge pipes, tunnels, they're hardly pipes, 22 feet in diameter, running down both sides of the river, and collecting all that stuff that used to go into the river when we'd have a big rainstorm. One more thing I'll say, and then probably about the system, and then take some questions. The other thing you need to know about the surface water management part of the system is that the city of Portland is really 4 cities when it comes to surface water management. There's that combined part, which is really the central part of the city that I just talked about. There's the east part out here. And you'll know out here, we mostly run what's called underground injection facilities, dry wells, okay? And we use separation wells that take out things like heavy metals and collect oils, but the water itself is re-injected into the aquifer out here, because basically east of about 52nd, 55th, somewhere about there, this turns into a large alluvial floodplain out here, and the water goes away pretty well. Not so much, though, in the Columbia Slough. That's a whole different issue, where you're in basically a floodplain down there, and we have to figure out how to get that water off Alameda Ridge through that floodplain and not flood out all the businesses and the airport and a few other things that are out there, and get it back to the Columbia River. And then the fourth piece of surface water management that I will tell you right now is going to be the biggest challenge for this city going forward, and that's the West Hills of Portland. They do not perk water, high clay soils, you can't put the water down in the ground, steep slopes, lots of stream corridors, and mostly underdeveloped local streets, something you all know about out here too. Underdeveloped local streets on steep slopes, and we have a heck of a time trying to manage the surface water up there. That's going to be another big challenge for the system going forward. So maybe I should stop. You've had a chance to look a little bit at that, but you probably have some other questions. And well, let me return to the question that was already asked about the bill. Okay. On the last page of that handout, the very back of it, you see the combined monthly bill. And it's got a couple of graphs there. And it shows that the current year's bill, combined bill, this is average single family home bill. Okay, so take it, your bill may vary, let's put it that way. But the average single family homes bill currently is about $108 a month combined. And you'll notice the green part of the bill, that's us. We're about 2/3 of the bill, sewer and stormwater management. And then the blue part, about 1/3 of the bill, is the water bill. So everybody refers to it as the water bill, lovingly. And we all really appreciate that everybody does that. But just so you know, we're about 2/3 of that bill. And you'll notice that the bill is projected to go up next year, the average bill, to about $112.79. That's about a 4.46% increase. I can tell you our bill is going up about I want to say 2.85%, but I have to go look again at the number on page 7 of this handout. Actually, it's 2.35% this year is what the sewer bill is going up. We are attempting very hard on our side of the ledger to manage our rate increases to be really stable and predictable, actually, over time. We're shooting for about inflation. That's our goal, is to try to keep the bill going up at about the rate of inflation. And really the driver there is the maintenance of this big system that's really old. And 2/3 of our money is going to capital. And for us, that's the big driver. And I know you're going to hear from Water about a couple of big projects they have that are big drivers for their bill. But quite frankly, it's really about reinvesting in this big piece of infrastructure. That's what drives most of our bill.
You start wooden pipe.
We have no wooden pipe that I'm aware of. Yeah. Yes.
First, I want to thank the utilities people because I'm old and poor. I'm on that program.
Okay.
Where I think it's December, I get a bill for around $130 or so.
Right.
And from then on, it's like $30-some every pay period.
Right.
What, 3 months?
3 months, right.
I thank you for that. That's very helpful. My question is, who is overseeing all of this? That none of this money goes to any pet projects like a $700,000 house of the future.
That's Alan's job. No, well, let me say a little more than that. Certainly the city council, about almost 3 years ago now, was very concerned that there be really strong oversight of both utilities, and that's why they created the utility board. The utility board replaced a couple of boards previously that used to work with the utilities. And Alan mentioned overseeing our spending and our budget. But I can tell you that it's only the 3rd year, so we're still kind of establishing the relationship. But we're also bringing things like all of our strategic plans to them. We're bringing things about how we intend to change the way we do business. If we're going to change the level of service standards, we're bringing it to the board and engaging them in those conversations. So they really are a much broader and deeper oversight than we used to have before their creation, where we convene folks and kind of go through the budget, and budgets are a difficult thing to go through and really understand. But we work with them all year long, not just at budget time. And so they have quite a bit of transparency into what we do every day. And I'll say that you may know, we just experienced or just got finished with a lawsuit that went on for about 5 years about how the utilities were spending money. And I think we learned a lot through those 5 years about what's an appropriate expenditure and what's not an appropriate expenditure. And so I've been there 3 years. I can tell you I'm confident that we are really scrutinizing our expenditures so that they are totally related to the service delivery of what we're supposed to be delivering service for. So appreciate the question though, because I know we have a history. Yeah, who's watching Alan? That's a good question. Micah watches Alan. It's a great question. Somebody should watch Alan. What else?
To tee off on that question, where do we rank in other metropolitan systems as far as rate goes?
Yeah, there's a page
Ruler
in.
has it for the eye on the left.
There's a page in there, page 8. It shows a comparison among both some large utilities that are compared to us as big utilities in the country, but also some local folks. We're about in the middle. Our rate increase, however, this year is probably in the lower third of increases overall. I can tell you the trend I think you'll see as we go through time on this chart. Portland is way ahead of the curve on this combined sewer overflow problem. We've spent the money, we've issued the debt, we've basically fixed the problem, at least as EPA has defined it for us. A whole bunch of the other folks on this list, the big folks from around the country, who have not yet done that, you're going to see their rates go up faster than ours. We'll actually probably keep sliding down this list over time because of that big expenditure for CSO that we made like over 15 years through the early part of this century. Maybe it would be good if Water wants to add anything, I don't know, and then we can answer more questions.
So hello, my name is Edward Campbell. I'm the Resource Protection Funding Director for Portland Water Bureau. So I don't think it'll make Teresa feel bad to point out that we're kind of the fifth string here. That's playing off a joke that Mike Jordan made earlier in the day when he said he was the third string. Well, we have 4 other people in the organization who probably would have been more appropriate to come tonight, but we're going to do our best to give you some relevant information. My regular job is really focused on our source protection programs and our environmental programs in the organization. I spent the day studying up on our low-income program to give you a little bit of information about some additional expansion that has just been approved by the City Council and that will go into effect starting July 1st. And so I want to make sure you guys understand that. But I think there's a parallel element to some of the things that Mike has talked about in terms of the cost driving, and I know that was sort of the first question. For the Water Bureau, we're facing a major regulatory mandate, an unfunded mandate, federal mandate under the Safe Drinking Water Act to start treating our primary drinking water source in the Bull Run to address cryptosporidium. And although it breaks my heart as the watershed protection manager that we're having to go down that path, because for many years we got away with not having to build this additional treatment because of the quality of our source, last year we did start to detect cryptosporidium at levels that made it so that we were required to build this treatment plant. So that's going to be a major endeavor. It's a $500 million project that we are obliged to build by 2027. So Teresa, our chief engineer, she's basically the one who's having to start to assemble and put together this whole program that's going to take that long before we can actually build. So it's a very complicated, complex project that is going to really be the big driver of a lot of the costs that we're confronting within the drinking water utility. But in addition to that, we in the Water Bureau have been very proactive in looking at the effects of a potential Cascadia subduction zone earthquake on our system. And we really work closely with water utilities around the state of Oregon, outside in the region, that are subject to this vulnerability of a major earthquake really affecting our ability to provide water. And so we're taking initial steps to harden, what we call harden our system, to make it more reliable and resilient in the event of a significant earthquake. And our plan is essentially to try to protect and have what we call a lifeline in our system that when the earthquake occurs, we will not expect to be able to provide service to everyone the same way that we do now, but we do hope to have a backbone essentially that will allow us to have water throughout the major portions of our system so that water is available on a regional basis throughout the city post a major event. So there's projects that are coming up first of all, there's projects we've already done that are part of this. We had a major project at Powell Butte to install a new underground water reservoir at Powell Butte. That reservoir is seismically hardened and up to